We begin during World War II. Over 50 million people had perished in this catastrophic war. During the final year of the war, 1945, the Yalta Conference took place. At this conference, a plan was formed for the reorganization of Europe following a German surrender. It was decided that Germany would be split into 4 zones, each of them held by a different country: France, the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. Also, the German city of Berlin would also be divided just like the whole of Germany was. These divisions were confirmed at the Potsdam Conference. On May 23, 1949, the 3 western zones became the Federal Republic of Germany. On October 7, 1949, the Eastern Soviet Zone became the German Democratic Republic. The West was democratic and the East was communist. Keep in mind that Berlin was in the Soviet zone while still split in half. For the first 10 years after the division, the borders remained open, but as many East Berliners felt that West Berlin was better, they began to flee across the border in greater numbers. In order to combat this migration, the East German government began to construct the wall in August of 1961. In the following years, there were improvements made to the wall. In 1962, a more efficient wire fencing was added. In 1965, the wall was reinforced with concrete. Finally, in 1975, a final improvement was made. This enforced the wall with more than 40,000 pieces of concrete. This improvement would be the most significant. In addition to the wall, there were armed guards who would try to kill anyone who attempted to escape. Now it was harder than ever to leave from the Eastern Communist regime and go to the democratic West Berlin. To some, the wall was just a wall, but to others it meant a whole lot more. The wall represented a divided Europe, divided between a democratic West and a communist East. It was the Iron Curtain made real. Furthermore, it represented a loss of human rights, a loss of freedom, and the oppression from the Soviets and the GDR. Now the East German people were trapped, they couldn't experience Western freedom. In addition to this, the wall was also an artistic medium. All along the wall there are many examples of graffiti. Many people had tried to escape from the oppressive East. Many tried to jump the wall and escape. The wall was really 2 walls together with a zone in the middle. In that zone, there were attack dogs, mines, and soldiers that were there to stop anyone who tried to escape. Also, there were more than 300 watchtowers. Besides the people trying to go over it, others went under it. There were a few tunnels that were dug which helped people escape. The wall drove people to go insane lengths to escape from the East. It was an obstacle to be overcome, and more than 100 people died trying. As time went on, more and more people called for the removal of the wall. Even President Ronald Reagan called out Gorbachev to tear down the wall.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
An increasing amount of pressure was put on the East German government. In 1989, there were more protests against communist regimes. Days before the collapse of the wall, there was a huge protest in which 500,000 people showed up. These protests put pressure on the government to ease the tight border restrictions. On November 9, 1989, an up until then boring and routine press conference turned into an exceptional and monumental one. Gunter Schabowski, an official spokesman, announced to everyone's surprise that the border was open, effective immediately. It was a very abrupt announcement, and it was also misread. It was supposed to open the next day, but he had said immediately. This is why the German border guards were unprepared. Also, he failed to include the statement that there would be some restrictions, but the news was spread everywhere. The news aired on the top news stations in West Germany.
Mir ist es hier also mitgeteilt worden, dass eine solche Mitteilung heute schon verbreitet worden ist. Sie müsste eigentlich in Ihrem Besitz sein. Also Privatreisen nach dem Ausland können ohne Vorliegen von Voraussetzungen, Reiseanlässe und Verwandtschaftsverhältnisse beantragt werden. Die Genehmigungen werden kurzfristig erteilt. Zuständige Abteilung Pass- und Meldewesen der VP, der Volkspolizei, Kreisämter in der DDR sind angewiesen, Visa zur ständigen Ausreise unverzüglich zu erteilen, ohne dass dafür noch geltende Voraussetzungen für eine ständige Ausreise vorliegen müssen. Ständige Ausreisen können über alle Grenzübergangsstellen der DDR zur BRD erfolgen. Damit entfällt die vorübergehende ermöglichte Erteilung von entsprechenden Genehmigungen in Auslandsvertretungen der DDR bzw. die ständige Ausreise mit dem Personalausweis der DDR über Drittstaaten. Die Passfrage kann ich jetzt nicht beantworten. Das ist auch eine technische Frage. Ich weiß ja nicht, die Testpässe müssen ja, also damit jeder im Besitz eines Passes überhaupt erstmal ausgegeben werden. Wir wollten aber sicherlich
die inhaltliche Aussage.
Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis, ist das sofort. Unverzüglich. Wie die Presseabteilung des Ministeriums hat der Ministerrat beschlossen, dass bis zum Inkrafttreten einer entsprechenden gesetzlichen Regelung durch die Volkskammer diese Übergangsregelung in Kraft gesetzt wird. Also doch, ständige Ausreisen können über alle Grenzübergangsstellen der DDR zur BRD bzw. zu Berlin-West erfolgen.
The famous symbol of oppression was no longer effective. Citizens crowded at the checkpoints at the wall. The guards were confused, but they began to allow people through. There was no bloodshed, because none of the guards wanted to be the one who issued the lethal orders. As more and more people swarmed, Harold Jaeger, passport control officer for the East German Stasi, let the guards allow people to cross like there was no border at all. Identities weren't being checked. Harold Jaeger knew that he was outnumbered, and he also wasn't getting any guidance from his superiors on how to approach the issue, so he just let people through by opening the checkpoints. This event was a huge one that symbolized many things. It marked the end of the Cold War, the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union, and the beginning of the end of a divided Germany. Furthermore, it symbolized the supremacy of the capitalist system and the prevalence of democracy over communism. Finally, it marked a new era of better treatment toward the Eastern European countries. Building up to the fall of the wall, there were protests and revolutions, and the collapse inspired more of them. Less than a week later, in Czechoslovakia, there was the Velvet Revolution, which was set off as a reaction to police violence. Communism was overthrown in Czechoslovakia. In Romania, there was a revolution that overthrew its communist dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu. Furthermore, the Soviets didn't send in their tanks to help crush these revolutions as they had in the past. At long last, it seemed that communism was fading for good, at least in Eastern Europe. On December 3rd, in Malta, Gorbachev and President Bush released a statement declaring that the Cold War was finally coming to a close.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that a cooperative U.S.-Soviet relationship can indeed make the future safer and brighter. There is virtually no problem in the world, and certainly no problem in Europe, that improvement in the U.S.-Soviet relationship will not help to ameliorate. A better U.S.-Soviet relationship is to be valued in and of itself, but it also should be an instrument of positive change for the world. For 40 years, the Western Alliance has stood together in the cause of freedom, and now with reform underway in the Soviet Union, we stand at the threshold of a brand new era of U.S.-Soviet relations. Мы должны действовать очень ответственно, с тем, чтобы мы были на высоте вызовов времени. И мы не можем, тем более руководители таких государств, действовать как пожарники. Хотя пожарные команды полезную работу выполняют.
When Germany finally reunified in October of 1990, the other Eastern regimes were collapsing. On December 5, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned from his office and the Soviet Union was no more. He had already lost control of the many republics under Soviet control. It was only a matter of time when he would resign. The Iron Curtain had vanished and the power and presence of the Eastern Bloc was gone. Now Eastern Europe had to reintegrate with the West. With this goal in mind, the Maastricht Treaty was signed on February 7, 1992. This treaty established a European Union where an EU citizenship would be given to the citizens of the included countries: Belgium, Greece, Ireland, Germany, Luxembourg, Denmark, Netherlands, Italy, Portugal, France, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Furthermore, it laid the groundwork for the euro. This treaty was a huge step towards European integration. The Berlin Wall can serve as an example for today and the future that walls and hard borders won't always work. As some borders begin to tighten, it's hard to say whether they will last or not, taking example from the Berlin Wall.